On my program, I don't do a lot of Iraq reporting because we don't know what's happening. We can't find out. So I'm taking an argument that CNN and MSNBC are actually helping the terrorists by reporting useless explosions. Do you care if another bomb went off in Tikrit? Does it mean anything? No. It doesn't mean anything.
Wow. Doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything. I wonder if the families of the troops feel that way. I was asked by a reporter about this study. I refused to attack Fox the way my counterpart at CNN did. I've got a lot of respect for what they do over there. But when O'Reilly suggests that we are somehow helping terrorists by covering what is probably the most important issue facing America today, and more importantly says it doesn't matter when bombs go off that kill American troops, I have got to speak up. Here now, MSNBC military analyst and Congressional Medal of Honor recipient Colonel Jack Jacobs, MSNBC media analyst Steve Adubato, and Bob Cohn, author of Journalistic Fraud. Thanks to all of you for coming on the program. Appreciate it. All right, Colonel Jacobs, is this an insult?
Yeah, well, I think it's just stupidity, especially when he says that the reason he doesn't report anything is because he can't find anything out. It's easy to find anything out. The essence of journalism is calling up people and getting their take on things. I talk to people in the government all the time. It's easy to get information about Iraq and anything else you want.
But what about the idea that you know, it doesn't matter? I mean, that no one's interested in a bombing in Tikrit, for example.
Well, clearly everybody's interested. As a matter of fact, I'd be surprised if this isn't the issue that decides the next election.
Yeah.
It doesn't. This is the singular use of the military instrument in our time. It's going to decide what happens not only in the United States, but what will happen in the Middle East for a long time to come.
All right. Now, Bill O'Reilly asked his own experienced military analyst his opinion on his radio show. I'm guessing he didn't like what he had to say either.
Is there any value to you as an American, not as a military analyst, to see the latest atrocity du jour, the latest explosion du jour? Do you want to see that?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to disagree on this one. But I care about the bomb in Tikrit if it kills American soldiers. That's why I think it's important. We've got guys in combat. We seem, as a nation, we've turned our back on this.
All right, look, Bob Cohn, you often defend Bill O'Reilly. I think this is almost an indefensible position.
Well, I don't think Bill O'Reilly's insulting the troops, but I do think he's insulting your intelligence. Now, I'm not here to defend Bill O'Reilly. I'm not here as his surrogate. It's not easy to follow the line of reasoning that you're going here and you're attacking here. But I think there's a meta-analysis here that I think it's important, because what Bill O'Reilly was simply doing was defending his network against an attack by a liberal think tank, which was picked up by an AP story.
That's fine.
And now that's being used by you to attack him.
Look, I had the opportunity to attack Fox News when they called me and asked me for comment about the study. I said, you know what? I'm not going to get on my high horse and start talking about these numbers. But when I hear Bill O'Reilly start talking about the fact that it simply doesn't matter when there's a bombing in Tikrit, and then suggest that somehow by the fact that we cover the war in Iraq, that somehow shows that MSNBC is aiding the terrorists. I'm not going to be
covering the war. No, you're not covering the war in Iraq. There's a lot of coverage that was missed here. There are a lot of parts of Iraq that are quiet, that progress is being made, and that's not being reported by your network or by CNN.
That's not what he's talking about.
This study, what this study is, it's by an organization, by the way, this journalist, the Excellence in Journalism.
So are the numbers wrong? Are there numbers wrong?
This is an organization.
I don't care what about the organization. Are there numbers wrong?
Yeah, it does. The objectivity. This organization doesn't believe that objectivity is a goal of journalism. The numbers are right, but why doesn't the headline say war takes up more time on NBC?
Dan.
But the headline is war takes up less time on Fox.
And this is another.
It's just the way you're positioning it.
This is another important point here. Hang on a sec, Steve. This is. Let me read. This is according to the project. They're called the Project for Excellence in Journalism, and this is the findings. That MSNBC devoted nearly a third of our airtime to the war, compared to 25% for CNN and 15% for Fox. But here's the important point, and follow this up, is that of the 31% total, 26% was on a policy debate. Only 3% of the total time of our airtime was on the events on the ground. So the notion, Steve Adubato, that somehow we are focusing all our attention on these bombings everywhere and death and destruction is not just absurd, it's just not true. I got to say, I hope he apologizes, because when he went on his television show today, he changed it a little bit. He wasn't making the same sort of incendiary comments that he made on his radio show. Here's what he said. Again, this is his rant against us on his TV show.
In my opinion, CNN and especially MSNBC delight in showing Iraqi violence because they want Americans to think badly of President Bush, and that strategy has succeeded. So their Iraqi coverage is more political than informational, again, in my opinion. Could be wrong about CNN. I'm not wrong about the committed left-wing crew over at NBC.
Yes, of course, of course, of course. That strategy has succeeded. The bottom line is he talks about the fact that the Fox's ratings are so great and no one watches CNN or MSNBC, and yet somehow we've been able to shape public opinion in this country so much.
This is like McCarthyism. This is like McCarthyism.
How's that?
Dan, how is that? Because you guys complained that your patriotism was being questioned when you guys spoke out against the war. Now you're questioning this guy's dedication to the troops.
Speak out against the war.
You're questioning his dedication to the troops. Absolutely. I think you're taking this out of context. He was definitely making a point here about the journalism that's going on here.
No, but
you have a liberal think tank make a report. It's twisted by AP. You never see a right-wing think tank.
Bob, deal with the numbers.
You never see a right.
But he can't deal with it. Here's the problem, Steve. He can't deal with the numbers. Bill O'Reilly can't deal with the numbers. And instead of...
it's the analysis of the numbers. NBC...
At least he should do, Jack Jacobs.
I'm sorry, Dan. NBC, I know what the numbers are. NBC is distorting the news against President Bush.
I know. Let's listen to the people. I know, it doesn't fit in with the Bob Cohen and Bill O'Reillys of the world. It doesn't fit in.
That wasn't very long ago.
Night after night, I think what he's talking about is the preponderance of news about just bombing. Now, any journalist will know it's all about the exceptions, okay?
Right.
Well, war is about bombing. And if you show bombing every night in the war, you're not showing the full picture of the war. That's not what's going on.
But this is, Jack Jacobs, this is what Bob Cohen and Bill O'Reilly love to do. They love to twist things. Again, when we talked about the 3%, we talked about the 3% of our coverage has focused on the events on the ground. 3%. Now, I could see, Jack Jacobs, if someone, a military man, could argue, you know what? You guys ought to cover the events on the ground even more.
Well, as a matter of fact,
hold
on a second. As a matter of fact, of that 3% about the events on the ground, I myself have spoken often on the air in that 3%, talking about the good things that are taking place. And I'll tell you right now, a lot of good things are taking place in Anbar province, where attacks are down over 90%. But unless you're going to
let him finish. Let him finish, Bob. Go ahead.
If you're going to be a journalist, you talk about everything. And this.
Hang on a second. This is an embarrassment. I get it. It's a huge embarrassment to Fox News. I wasn't going after them. I was staying out of the fray because you know what? When you start talking about numbers, who knows what's going to come out of the numbers? I stayed out of the fray.
But then Bill O'Reilly regrets the two sentences that came out of his mouth.
So then Bill O'Reilly today and tonight, doesn't just insult us. I can deal with the insult to us. But again, the notion it doesn't matter what happens in Tikrit is an insult. It's an insult to everyone involved.
But to argue that the reason we don't get a fuller picture of the story in Iraq with MSNBC's coverage is because of an ideological political bias to bash the Bush administration is absurd, number one. And number two,
that's not absurd.
One second, Bob.
That's not absurd. That's what's going on.
Bob,
you won't admit it.
Because
when you got one of
Bob,
me.
here's what happens. At the beginning of every day, Bob, I sit at the end of a table and I say, all right, guys, and I get all the primetime teams out there and I say, let's figure out how to make this administration look as bad as possible.
Yeah.
Who wants to do Iraq?
Then you'd be stupid,
and they all raise their
biased.
hands. It's absurd,
How does it work, Bob?
It's not absurd. It's absolutely it's going on.
So you know what's happening? Are you accusing... Wait, as the person who runs the network, Bob, are you accusing me of telling people to cover the story in a way that embarrasses the administration?
I don't know whether you're a news... You're not a news reporter. You're an analyst, okay?
Right, and I also run MSNBC.
You can be analyst any way you want. I'm talking about the network news and the way the network reports the so-called objective news.
That's fine. Look, that's a
news analysis.
That's a separate topic.
Dan,
Steve,
no, that's what O'Reilly's talking about.
No, it's not.
He's not talking about news analysis.
Bob, wait a minute. Dan is the general manager of MSNBC.
In this particular case, he owes a huge apology. He doesn't have to apologize to us.
Fair enough.
Honestly, we don't need an apology. Whether the people who do need an apology are the families of those troops who did die from a bombing in Tikrit. They're the ones who are owed an apology here by Bill O'Reilly.
That's how you're taking his two sentences.
That's right. That's what he meant.
That's the way.
Look, he's the man. He's a
owes an apology.
Bill O'Reilly is a wordsmith. He's not a civilian. He's a wordsmith. And I'm going to take him at his word, and I take everything he says. I listen to it. I'm responding to it.
Okay.
We'll see what he says.
We have numbers that say NBC is biased. Okay, I'll take you at your word.